I know the path doesn't look like the promise, but that's the whole point. We're going to get into it. Hi, I'm Joe. Welcome back. This is the Ultimate Love Letter. Thank you for joining the conversation. Are you on a path right now where it seems like it's not leading you to the destination that God has shown you? God speaks to us in our dreams. He speaks to us in our meditation. He speaks to us in hundreds of different ways all day long. And if you have gotten a word from God, and chances are you have, if we've been paying attention, then God has shown you glimpses of your promise. And perhaps the path that you're on right now doesn't look like it's leading you to that promise. But I think that's the whole point. I believe that's exactly where the saying comes from. Trust the process. And now, who can we look to in the Bible where their path did not equal the promise on the surface, but it was certainly producing the promise in the spiritual realm? I'm thinking about Joseph. Joseph got dreams that he saw his brothers bowing down to him, that he saw the sun and the stars bowing. Now, when he got that dream and he let his brothers know, he let others know about it, he was sold into slavery. He was then accused and thrown into prison. None of that looked like he was headed for the promise that God gave him in his dream. But it was all heading to the destination. Let's not grow weary in where we're at thinking this is the final destination. God is far too creative than that. God is attempting to grow our character, our faith in the journey to becoming everything, in the destination. Who we are today needs to be built into the one who will be able to withstand the promise that he's bringing. Allow him to build you in this season. It is all equaling the promise. When Joseph was thrown into prison, I often think about the cupbearer. The cupbearer that, when he was in prison with Joseph, what did Joseph tell him? He said, "Do not forget me," when he was being released back to Pharaoh. But the cupbearer did forget him for another 2 years. Now, on the surface, it might look like, dang, only if the cupbearer would have remembered earlier, then perhaps Joseph would have been released 2 years earlier. Okay, that's what you and I say in reality. But what would it have looked like had it been released 2 years earlier? He would have gotten his freedom, but what would his life look like? Where would he have gone? What would he have done? Instead of the fact that the cupbearer was reminded 2 years later when Pharaoh needed a dream interpreter, and then Joseph was sent to Pharaoh to interpret the dreams, then how did his life look? He got the promise that God had shown him many years before that to rule over it all. So everything played a part in God's grand plan, which was to bring Joseph the promise of Egypt. And he remained faithful in those seasons, the seasons of, yes, being sold into slavery, the seasons of, yes, being thrown into prison, and then being forgotten in prison. If any of those things would have not happened in exactly the moment that it happened, if Joseph was released maybe 2 years earlier, he would have never come into the full promise, which is Pharaoh recognizing his talents and then putting him second in command, ruling over everything. He would have just been released. He would have just been released into Egypt, it would have just been the end of his story. Like, okay, it was someone that was sold into slavery, went into prison, and now he was freed. No grand story there. But everything that God used, he used to elevate Joseph, to grow his character so he would have the grandest testimony, so it would be so evident that it was only God who could have orchestrated such a miracle. God uses it all. Can we see that in Joseph's story? And it's so easy to see it in Joseph's story because now we see the whole picture. But can we relate to it on the path that we are right now? Maybe the path that you're on doesn't look like the promise. Now, I'll tell you my own story. God showed me pillars years ago, maybe about 5-6 years ago. He showed me pillars, and he showed me pillars that would be my home. And I've never forgotten that vision. Now, all he showed me at that time was the pillars and what I got the sensation of, which was wealth on a grand scale. A huge home. This was definitely my property. I wasn't anywhere else other than my personal property. But God just gave me that glimpse of the promise. Now, where I'm at today, perhaps may not look like the promise, but I'm trusting the process because the promise will come to pass. God cannot fail, but we can fail him. And how we fail him is believing that where we're at is not serving a purpose in his whole bigger agenda into bringing us to the destination. Don't be fooled by what we see today. God is using it all to bring us the promise that he has given over our life. No, God will not fail. If you find yourself at a place right now where you're saying, well, God failed me. He showed me that I was going to break into my industry. That was 20 years ago and I haven't done it. Keep going. It's not over yet. If you still have breath in you, it is not over yet. You're doubting, you beginning to doubt right now is signs that you are failing him. You are failing yourself. When we give up on God, we give up on the promises that God has us. It's never God. It's always us. He gives us free will to choose. The promise is a promise. If it's from God, you can bank on it. If God has shown you someplace he's taking you, you can take that to the bank. That is a check you can certainly cash. But we forfeit that by not going to the bank with the check. We forfeit that by believing the check will bounce. We fail ourselves. It's not God. It's us. If you want to see God's promises over your life, then promise yourself right now that you're going to hold that destination, that promise that God has shown, and you are going to follow the path to get it. You're not going to be stumbling when God brings adversity, because it's all character building. You got to be strengthened for where you're going, because it is. If God has shown you, and He has shown us big plans, big dreams for us, then we have to become a new creation to be able to manage, to maintain, to hold that position. And all this is the adversities that He's bringing us is the same adversities He brought Joseph. It's just to strengthen us so that we can hold the promise when we get it. Think about David. The promise that David got. David was a shepherd boy. And he just had a heart of God. When he was anointed, right? And when he was shown the promise that he would rule over Israel, everyone on the outside could have laughed, because he went first. He went into King Saul's palace to serve Saul, right? Then he had to go into hiding for many years because Saul was seeking his life. A king and an army after him, seeking his life. Where did that look like he would one day rule over Israel? None of it. I can only imagine what David was thinking out in the wilderness. Like, how am I going to rule over Israel one day when the king of Israel is seeking my life? But it was all God's plan to prepare him to rule over Israel. Him fighting the lions and becoming victorious over that. Him fighting Goliath and him becoming victorious over that. Him then going into hiding and him becoming victorious over that. All that was doing was building his character, his strength, building him even further in his humility that would then give him the crown, the seat to rule over it all. And then he would become the king because of his humility that would see, whose reign would go on to see no end. No end. Because of everything God built in him through the adversities on the path. Don't discount where you are today, friend. You lost your job, character building. Your relationship with your loved one ended, character building. You perhaps are losing a home, you have to move out of your home, character building. Stay on the path with God. Allow Him to take what He needs to take away, because when He says, I will give you back more than you lost, understand what that means. That's the promise. That's the promise. That's really legit the care that He's holding ahead of you. He showed you the promise. He's saying, do you want this? Then I got to strip everything that needs to go for you to get this. But do you want the carrot, or do you want to cling to the things that you have around you today? I don't know about you, but I saw the promise that God has shown over my life, and I want that. So then I got to not be fooled by what the path looks like. And I got to understand what's true. I saw what Joseph went to rule over Egypt. I saw what David went through to rule over Israel. I saw what Job went through to gain even more than he lost. I see how you work in God. I see how you work by how you have worked since the beginning of time. And the way God worked back then in biblical times is the same God who is still working the same way today. God says He never changes. We are the ones that change. He's the same God. Allow the same God that brought David to rule over Israel, allow that same God to bring you to your purpose, the plans that He has over your life, the promise that he has shown you. Don't fail him. Don't fail yourself. A promise is still a promise when it's from God. It will only never come to pass when we just give up, when we lie down, when we succumb to things never changing because things haven't changed. Things will change in a moment's notice. Joseph went from prison to palace in a single conversation. When he woke up that day in prison, it didn't look like he would be going into the palace and immediately elevated over Egypt. There was no escalation. There was no gradual elevation within his circumstances. He woke up in a prison. He was then cleaned up that day and put before Pharaoh. And by the end of that conversation, he was ruling over Egypt. Done. In a moment's notice. Life changed overnight. God works in the suddenly. Keep your eyes on God and not on how the path looks right now. And when we get spooked by what the path looks like, just simply go to the story of Job, the story of Moses, the story of David, the story of Joseph, the story of Abraham, the story of Sarah, the story of Ruth. God is showing He is showing us over and over how he works in the suddenly. How all of those that come before us, all of our ancestors, traveled paths that didn't look like they were leading to the purpose, but they all were. Keep your eyes fixated on God. Don't fall for the distractions of what it looks like today. God is He is far more creative than you, than me, than anyone. He is using it all for your greatest good. He is using it all to promote you to the promise. Don't stop now. Thank you so much for joining this convo. I want to thank you to all who have found us on YouTube and have subscribed there. Thank you so much. Your subscription, also your likes, your comments, your shares make our podcast even more recognizable. And thank you to everyone who has found me on Instagram or TikTok. My bios is linked in the show notes. Also, if you're being led to support this mission, there's a couple of links in our show notes where you can give a love offering, and I am praying over every single offering that God expands your territory. Also, we have our official merch available in told.shop, and that's also linked in the show notes. So check that out. Everything in our World Treasure collection is coming with free shipping to the U.S. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being a part of my mastermind. It's me, it's you, it's God. Until next time, love yourself and love others. We'll chat again real soon. Bye for now.